Just to know you're here to stay. I walk with faith, not with fear. Every step I know you're near. Through the doubt, through the rain, you're the calm inside the flame. Even when the night is long, your light leads me on. So I walk.
Blessings, everyone. Welcome to the Walk with Faith podcast with Molly Faith and Angela Nibley. Hi, Angela.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming back on.
Thank you for having me. I always have such a good time with you.
Oh, you're so welcome. I know, me too. And we've taken a little bit of a break, so I'm really excited to have you as the first wonderful special guest and my dear angel sister on this interview. This is going to be great. So thank you. Okay, Angela. So we've been talking for a bit, catching up, and kind of going through these questions.
Mhm.
So I'm going to just start with this question for you so we can get right into it, okay?
Okay.
Okay. As a soul choosing this life, what lesson did you come here to master?
That's such a powerful question, and it gets to the heart of why are we even here, right? And I think we can get clues about what our purpose, our personal themes are from directly from the challenges we've had, and especially the challenges we've been born into. So for me, one of my primary challenges that I was born into were systems of power and oppression. And so learning my power, as children of the creator, we are incredibly powerful entities. And that's what this whole game, this matrix inversion simulation is here to teach us. Because when you are such an incredibly powerful entity, when you really think about it from an eternal perspective, what's the most fun you could have is to tie yourself up in knots and see if you can get yourself out of it, right? It's like, it's the whole Houdini aspect of it. Like, because when you have forever and you are so powerful, you want to be challenged. Easy games
Right.
are not the fun ones. It's so much more fun to win the hard ones. And so we can really get ideas about our paths from that. And so power, empowerment, abuse of power has been a huge one. Oppression and oppressive systems. I was born into a narcissistic family system in a family that functions like a cult. And I repeated a lot of those patterns into adulthood because that was what was imprinted upon me. That was normalized. That was what felt like home. I had a Stockholm syndrome-like relationship with each of my parents. And so I created friendships with women that recreated that. And I created romantic relationships with men that recreated those similar dynamics with each of them. And so I really had to deconstruct where my trauma was because it was so, it's the same people that teach you how to drink a cup of water. It's like trying to explain water to a fish. It's so imprinted on what you think reality is that to really start deconstructing that is huge. So when I recognized that power imbalance and abuse of power and being on the lower and it wasn't just my family, it was in employment opportunities. It was going into different professional environments where there were power games being played, where there were narcissistic hierarchies at play. And the people who behaved most narcissistically tend to get to the top the fastest. And the ones who didn't were largely codependent and placating those systems and playing the game with them, even if they themselves weren't inherently narcissistic. They still misused their power in letting those structures rise, which is why I became so acute to those patterns of behavior. And I also have childhood CPTSD because of the abuses I survived, which really turned on my cognitive functioning and my need to recognize patterns for survival and that hypervigilance at a very young age, or I would not have survived. So on one hand, that's very difficult. And on the other hand, there's always a gift that comes with overcoming a struggle like that. There's always a gift on the other side of it. You develop a muscle, you develop skill sets that
Right.
once you heal that trauma, you can tap into and you can capitalize off of, and you can use those to really rocket launch you into new areas. And I think that's why, from the grander scheme of things, I do believe in an overall creator, but I don't think that God dictates our lives like, I'm going to sentence you to this life to do this. I think it makes a lot more sense that we do that for ourselves. I think we have a team that we work with on that. I think we decide where we want to grow and what challenges we want to learn and experience, what experiences we haven't had yet that we want to try out. And I think we craft stories that go along with that. And I think there's a lot of flexibility within that once you're in the game, but there's some hard points set in there that launch you. And so the way your story starts out really sets you up to succeed or crash. And so for me, unconditional love was one of the things I came to learn through highly conditional loving systems that
Right.
I say loving, they weren't loving at
Right.
all, but they
Right.
used the word love for abuse. And so having to deconstruct that and say, and I was born into my family with an open heart chakra. So I was just like, okay, you say love. That sounds great to me. Like, let's just love each other. And then there's abuse after abuse after abuse after
Right.
abuse. I think that as I'm wearing this shirt today.
I
But
love your shirt. Can you show everyone your shirt really quickly? You look,
warm-hearted, it's on the
yeah,
camera. Warm-hearted.
exactly.
I didn't even think
Yeah.
about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was born. That's so funny and intuitive that like I hadn't worn this shirt in so long, and all of a sudden I found it last night, and it was like, "You're gonna wear that tomorrow." Okay, so
Yep.
that's funny. The stream of consciousness blends right into that. But yeah, I was born with an open, activated heart chakra into this family that does not have open hearts, and they are very wounded. They are very cruel to each other and themselves, and they call those their codependent interactions love, and it's really sad actually. They're very hurt people who think that hurting people is the way they're going to solve that, and it's not. It's an illusion. And so conditional love versus unconditional love was one of the
Totally.
big lessons I came to learn, because you learn truly at some point that you have to love yourself first. And the reason I kept sacrificing myself for those relationship dynamics was an act of self-betrayal. So, we come to this polarized dimension to learn through polarity and to learn through opposites. So I learned a lot about betrayal because I chose those people in an act of self-betrayal. And that does not absolve them of the responsibility of what they did. What they did was not okay. What they did was hurtful and abusive, sometimes illegal and very, very wrong. And they are responsible for that, and they will be held accountable for that. But I can also see my power and my influence and the ways I did not make the choice in my best interest, the way that I abandoned and betrayed myself in choosing to repeat those patterns with them after they showed me who they were. That's my responsibility for following through on. And I abandoned and betrayed myself inward. And so I experienced externally abandonment and betrayal from those same systems that
Absolutely.
I abandoned and betrayed myself to maintain. So that's one lesson, conditional, unconditional love, betrayal, abuse, power, and how to use power righteously, how to use it. Because it's one thing to not abuse power and it's not easy when you are not healed and this world does its best to make people unhealed, and you are given a position of power. It is very, very easy to indulge in abuse of power, even in subtle ways, especially if you think you can get away with it, especially if you think no one's watching or the people you're abusing don't realize it or can't
There's
report you.
always someone watching.
There's always someone watching. I don't know why more people don't get that, especially the ones who claim to believe in God. Some people don't believe in God,
Thank
so I
you.
understand that. But so many of the people who claim to believe in God think nothing's going to like what they do behind closed doors is secret. And I promise you, there are recording angels taking every single note. And every single person that was harmed knows on some level what you did. They know that they were violated. They feel the violation in their being. Some of them are very aware of it, even if they don't feel safe enough to call you out on it. Sometimes, it's also interesting when abuse happens to children, because adults think that kids don't pick up on things. And just because they don't have all the information to put it together doesn't mean that they're not someday going to be a middle-aged person who has all the context they need and a full memory of what happened. I remember something really heinous I was exposed to when I was 9 or 10, some really disgusting behavior. And it was assumed that I didn't know what was going on and couldn't put it together. And that was true at the time. But now, as a woman in
Wow.
my 40s, I remember everything that happened, and I do have the context to understand exactly what was going on. And I
Wow.
remember this and this and this and this, and how that all pieces together as an adult with more understanding of what that kind of dynamic was at play.
Okay, this is where divine timing is the perfect timing because sometimes we're not supposed to know everything at that moment. Why?
Mhm.
Because it could be very traumatic
Yeah.
for us to process all that information at that time. But as you said, that was at 9 or 10. You're now in your 40s. Look at all those years later. And now, God, your angel, whatever people want to believe in, your higher consciousness, your
Hmm.
higher self, now you have everything that you need that's put it all together because you are ready to receive
Hmm.
it.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Absolutely. And to piece together what that really meant, and also what that means about the people who were doing that, and what that means about who they are in a grander scheme. It's one more piece of a puzzle, but with a lot more pieces adding up. And
Right.
so that kind of abuse of power is neglecting the fact that they are wounded from their own childhood, and they don't recognize that they were treated the exact same way, and they think that doing the exact, it's so interesting how mindless we get in our wounding, and how narrow our tunnel vision is when it comes to repeating these patterns. So that's really interesting. But I do recognize that it takes incredible discipline not to abuse power when we're in our wounding, and it takes a lot of healing and self-discipline to recognize how important it is not to do that, and why it's important not to do that when you do have power. And one form of abuse of power is to not just overtly abuse it, but to not use power righteously when you have it. Because
Right.
if you are in the position of power to actually change things and make things better, and you don't want to rock the boat because it's cushy for you, like let's say someone is a mandatory reporter, and they don't want to rock the boat by filing the report they need to file because their life is too comfortable. Well, guess what? You have the prestige, you have the authority, you're in that position, and you have that, social capital, precisely because you're expected to handle
Yeah.
that kind of power responsibly and honorably and ethically. And when you fail to do that, you are neglecting to follow through on the social contract that you're already being paid in advance for. And so, not using your power righteously when you're the one in power, it's like, well, if not now, when? If not you, who? Who is going to handle that righteously when they have that power, if you don't want to do it when you're the one who has it?
That's right.
And at the same time, there are sometimes things people are dealing with in those positions we don't always know. There are sometimes more factors at play. The bottom line comes to, if they're following their guidance, if they're staying true to what's being told, or are they indulging in protecting themselves at the expense of the mission they're there to accomplish. And sometimes it's a timing thing. So we might get mad at people in positions of authority for not doing more when we want them to do more, when they might have information about timing being an important factor or whatever. There's still nuance in that. But by and large, there are people who like to be complacent and think, because I'm not an overt abuser, because I let other people do the abusing, or because I had another position like that too, where there was someone who was in a position of authority over me, and he did not consider himself an abusive person because he did not do egregious overt things. And yet he provided an umbrella for other people who did, and he watched them do it, and he knew they were doing it, and he protected them from doing it.
That's
They protected
just
him.
as, I'm sorry, but that's, you're held
It's
account. Yeah, that's just as bad.
Yeah, it is, because you're using your power to protect the people who are causing harm. And you're doing it for your own ego, whatever the reason is, because you're codependent with that person, because you're afraid of rocking the boat, you're afraid of not being looked at as cool, whatever it is, you are misusing your power. So, learning about power has been a huge lesson in this life. I've also been in positions of authority in infrastructures, as a director. There are a lot of people looking to me. And um, so recognizing that it's a temporary position that you have the job to do to make sure that things run smoothly, but it's not about you, and it's not about them being beholden to you. There's so much abuse, like in the artistic world, when it comes to directors thinking, wanting to play God and things like that, not realizing that, no, this is a temporary position. And that's why I think some acting companies that really change positions are a lot can be really healthy, because you'll have one person will be a director on this project and everyone else is an actor, and then you'll switch for another project. And so you really take turns having to hold that responsibility and take care of everyone, but you're approaching it as an act of service to accomplish
Right.
this and to be the cohesive glue that holds it together. which is not the same thing as expecting people to submit and to siphon from them and to dominate them and to dehumanize them to elevate your ego. That's a very, very different thing. And so a lot of people lose sight of that in their woundedness. They don't learn from that. And these are kind of fundamental themes that play out in the Matrix, but I had to learn them very acutely and starting at a very young age. I remember, planning a movie when I was 18 because I was working at the bottom rung of a department store and just recognizing the power plays involved. And like, I was already starting to say, okay, I want to write a movie about this. I want to talk about these power structures and how, and even then I recognized I didn't call it a pyramid scheme.
You're freezing
scheme that it was, but
there we go.
I was seeing that there are so many people. Okay. There are so many people at the bottom rungs of these systems that the whole system is reliant on, and it costs them the most, and they are extracted from in their labor, in their life force, and they're paid the least at this point in time, not really often paid enough to even survive on, which is criminal of itself, especially when a system should be able to sustain itself organically from the bottom up in a fair way. And if those systems can't support themselves, then they need to be reckoned in one way, or they need a reckoning and a reconciling of their, accounting in one way or the other. But so this has been something I've been acutely aware of even since I was, 18. I remember thinking I need to write stories about power imbalance and how much we rely on the people at the bottom, and how the people at the bottom are not inferior people and they are not of lesser worth. And we really need to humanize everyone, because without the people who are functioning at the bottom, the whole system collapses.
Absolutely.
And maybe sometimes it needs to for us to recognize that. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You said something that stuck out to me, and I would love for you to break it down a little bit more. You said submit to siphon energy.
Mm-hmm.
That what just came out of your mouth just kind of hit me. So can you explain a little bit more about that to people? What you would mean by submitting, and when you submit, what that means for people in power and how that can affect the energy and siphoned.
Yeah. I mean, our life force is so precious. And especially people at the bottom rungs of these infrastructures, and you can find all different kinds and labels of how these are, but fundamentally, the people at the bottom we all have life force. And the more in tune, the more open our heart chakra is. Our heart chakra is the portal to connecting to the Most High. And that is where we receive life force. And those of us who have a more open channel receive a more abundant flow of that. We just have a larger funnel to receive more of that. And that makes us prime source for people who have closed their hearts, which means their stream is much smaller. And every time you compromise yourself, you have to close your heart to choose, choices that compromise you, and the Matrix will often have you do that. That's part of the function, part of the game. And are there ways to get ahead ethically? Absolutely. And using, the Christ consciousness is so brilliant. It is so strategic. Yeshua and Mary Magdalene were so strategic in the way they functioned. They used strategy like nobody's business. So to think that we shouldn't be strategic is a miscalculation. And I'm actually working on a piece about the light and dark side of the trickster archetype, because I believe ascended masters are tricksters. But the difference between a light and dark trickster is that the light trickster is trying to free you.
Yep.
It's trying to give you a puzzle of truth that sticks in your mind until you unlock it yourself. And it's not telling you what to believe, and it's not telling you what to think. It's showing you how you are functioning from a place of distorted thinking. And it implants that and has you wrestle with it yourself until you open it and go ponder and meditate and pray on your own to find the truth for yourself and liberate you. It's not trying to entrap you. The dark side of the trickster archetype is that it's trying to entrap you. It's trying to deceive you. It's trying to get you to consent to contracts that do not serve your highest good so that you are more beholden to it. So you can rise through the matrix constructs without compromising yourself, but it is difficult. It is hard, and you need to be extremely strategic. You need to be extremely aware. You need to be extremely conscientious about what kinds of subtle contracts are always in play with people and who are trying to get you to co-opt your power to theirs. Because people who are focusing from an external locus of control, because they feel out of control in their unhealed trauma, they're trying to find that control
It's
and
true.
inner regulation by pulling strings and manipulating outcomes and trying to get other people to behave in a certain way that makes them feel more at ease, especially people who trigger them. If someone
Right.
triggers them, they want to dominate and control them to quell the trigger instead of actually facing that trigger is making you aware of a much deeper, older wound than you ever had before that person was in your life. And if that
Exactly.
person didn't come along, someone else would have walked in the room and activated the same thing. It has nothing to do with the people who are triggering you. Those are
Right.
core wounds that are usually caused by parental wounding, which we all have and have all caused if we are parents. So, that's somewhat universal in this game, but we're still responsible for healing them. And so when we have an external locus of control, instead of going inward and healing those core wounds, we are trying to find satiation in a kind of addictive way by controlling external people and circumstances to feel calm. Instead of recognizing we need to go inward, we need to find our inner locus of control, we need to see where our wounding is, we need to see what's ours and what isn't. So
Right.
when we're functioning in these matrix systems from an inner locus of control, then we can recognize the people who aren't. And the people who aren't are very lacking in self-awareness. Even the ones who are highly Machiavellian and especially self-aware still don't fully see themselves clearly, because that is the function of the wound. If they saw themselves clearly, they know not what they do. Once they see themselves clearly, that unlocks and the light comes in and their heart opens. And that's really painful when you have sorrow you've been repressing. And so people
Yeah.
usually keep it locked because it hurts. When you have an activated heart chakra after it's been turned down, there is so much sorrow congested there, and it takes immense purging. It is painful. And so people don't want to do it, especially if they haven't before, because it builds up.
So true.
Yeah. So,
That pain that you feel when you purge, that deep, deep pain, and it's not just one time. That's something important for people to understand too. It's
mhm,
not just one time that you're going to feel that. It is the deepest stabbing. I can even go back and I can take myself back there and I can feel it. That feeling that you feel and you just have, and it's just this purge that comes out. It's very difficult to feel that,
mhm.
but it's so important because
And it
we
feels
have
so good after.
after, like, you
Yeah.
have to go through it. You have to purge it and feel it. It is the biggest cleanser. Um, but it's you go through this pain, this deep pain, this process, and then afterwards, it's almost like I'm getting a vision of just the darkest storm clouds with it raining, and then the sun comes out. But
Hmm.
it takes time too. Then you've got to heal from that because it's so fresh. It's like this fresh wound.
Hmm.
And you have to be gentle on yourself. It doesn't mean you're not going to feel it again because it is like the layers. There could be something that comes back around because then now your heart is much more open.
Hmm.
It's vulnerable. It's
Hmm.
fresh, right?
Hmm.
And then there's going to be something else that comes in that is going to possibly remind you or teach you more or wound it. And you're like, oh gosh, I have to purge more. I have to go inward and feel this again.
Hmm.
But it is crucial to do,
Hmm.
but I think that really does strengthen you. It teaches you how to recognize things that come towards you, like you were saying, what you are here to master, coming here in this life, the misuse of power or things that you had to process when you were younger that you have more information now, but you're capable of feeling it. You're
Hmm.
capable of understanding it on a different
Hmm.
level. Um, but yeah, it's very important that people do this, Angela, because it's going to take time. But as we do it, we'll be able to recognize the things that are coming towards us, these lessons that we were here to learn. And it's also, yes, I love what you said. I'm coming back to that unconditional love because we can't fear it.
Hmm.
We can't. We have to move through it. We have
Hmm.
to feel it. And either way, yes, we have to be strategic. It'll teach us how to be strategic. Um, but also operate in that unconditional love,
Hmm.
especially for our own hearts and ourselves and not
Yeah.
abandoning ourselves. I think that's so beautiful. That's just, I felt that right here because
Well,
I
and
know that pain, you know?
it's so hard. And I think one of the hardest things is that if we don't have an example to show us why it's worth it, it just feels like indulging in pain for pain's sake. If we've never had anyone show us that this pain is actually productive, that it's actually healing you to go through this, because if you don't feel it, you're just carrying it around calcified in you. And that's what makes you hard-hearted. That's what makes you try to extinguish the light in other people when you see them having joy, when you see them having fun, you want to stamp it out because, you know, whatever we are, we want to magnify. When we're joyful, we want to magnify joy. When we're loving, we want to magnify love.
Yeah,
And when we're miserable, we want company, you know? So, um,
right.
in order to not be that person, uh, Ebenezer Scrooge, who's, just stamping out joy wherever they see it,
I
that's
love
when
that
you become
movie.
hard. That's when you become hard-hearted. You
Yeah,
calcify and carry that pain around you all the time. And that becomes what defines who you are and how you live your life if you don't do the work to clean it out. And to
right.
clean it out, you have to feel it. You have to feel the sorrow that you repressed because you were too traumatized to feel it in the moment that it actually wounded you. And that's what it is. It's old wounding that didn't get cleared up at the time because it was too traumatic to feel the intensity of it. And so we repress it and let it calcify and hold it in our fascia, in our tissue, because the body keeps score.
Of course.
So um, we need to feel it and open it. And when we don't have someone teaching us that there is a reason and a purpose, and that it is worth it, and
So
that there
worth
is
it.
light and lightness on the other side of it, and that's when you can let the joy come back into your life, and that's when you can let the light and the freedom and the love come back through you. And also, our hearts are electromagnetic generators, and they are portals to the Most High. And so our power from source comes through how open our hearts are. And courage, core, is, French for heart. COUR is the French word for heart. And so courage is to be acting from the heart. To be brave is to be acting in service to love, even when it costs you, even when it's scary. It's to be acting in love of your purpose, in love of your path, in love of your integrity, in love of your commitment to the Most High and the path you've created with the Most High for you to be living. And that can be difficult when the whole system wants to stamp out your joy and tell you to fall in line so that you can be an angry, resentful little droll, drone like the rest of them. I tried to say drone
Exactly.
and troll at the same time.
Yeah,
So
or a zombie,
yeah,
it's
hungry ghost, zombie, vampire, they're all the same thing of these soulless, shellless people who let their light get stamped out because they calcified their hearts and then they wait to
right.
spread it like a virus.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and it's really sad, but then they also envy the people who have it, and they don't realize that if you still have breath in your body, you can always return. You can always turn it around. But the word repent is very triggering, especially if you have religious trauma, especially people who were being abusive and telling you to repent for abuse you were the victim of or anything like that. But the true word of repent is to turn your heart to God. It is to turn your intentions and your motives back to what is true. And if you have breath in your body, there is still a chance for you to open
I
your heart up
agree. I
and to
agree.
purge that and to relive. There are so many blessings and miracles on the other side of choosing to open yourself up to that, even though it's painful. It is not easy. It's not for the faint of heart. It's for the courageous of heart.
That's
It's for
right.
the loving of heart. And that's where the gifts of the Spirit, that's the portal to the gifts of the Spirit.
That's
That's
right.
where brilliance comes through. That's where blessings comes through. That's where divinely, ethically derived wealth that is sustainable and, generous and whole and magnifying comes from. All of those things.
That's right.
So, yeah, it's a powerful lesson. And if there's anything we could do is to start setting the example for the world to show that it is safe to let yourself feel the hurt and to keep loving anyway and to keep being committed to our healing, and that you don't need to shut it off and become one of these, zombies, hungry ghosts that's
That's
trying to
right.
stomp out the light you see in other people because you resent that someone did that to you. You can get your light back, but it's a tender process and it's not going to be painless, but you're already in pain if you're there.
Right.
So do you want to be always in pain, or do you want to go through this intense purge and then feel light and joy and have your inner child come back to life on the other side of that?
That's right. And
Yeah.
And also not to feel guilty or shameful for shining brightly and being filled with joy and love, especially that's courageous in itself,
It is.
right?
Because especially if you've had it stamped out before,
Yeah,
it makes you feel
yeah,
like a target again.
yeah. That's something I can remember when I was little. I love my mom. She's with us in spirit, but it goes back to I used to get, you talk about coming into this life with an open heart chakra. My mom said when I was born, I came out smiling. Like, "Hi, I'm here." I didn't make a sound. I was just smiling. She
I
said I
believe
was
it.
she she said I was the most peaceful, sweetest little baby. And I came out so happy. So I thought that was cute. But my mom, her mother, um, she had never healed the wounds with her mother.
Hmm.
And her mother was very cruel to her. And I remember my mom telling me a story about she had this, when she was a little girl, she had a puppy that she absolutely loved. And her mom knew she loved it. And she came home from school one day and the puppy was gone. And she just took it from her because she knew that it brought her joy.
Hmm.
And my mom used to say how cruel her mother was, but how loving her father was. And her father was, he was the most loving man. What's interesting is her mother needed to get closer to the Most High, and her father was already highly spiritual. There was a poem that I have that I posted on the community page on Crossroads. I'll post it on this channel too, that my grandfather on my mother's side wrote. He understood that God was within us, and he walked with him, and he was just very enlightened, this enlightened being. But so my mom had these wounds. She had these trauma wounds that she needed to work on, you know, which I understood as I got older. But I remember when I was a little girl, I would get really excited about things or I'd be really, really happy. And there was a period of time when I was younger where my mom had not done the work and she tried to stamp out that light. So then what would happen was I didn't want to get really excited. I didn't want to, shine that light because I was fearful at that period of time that if I got really excited, she would automatically be like, "No, you're done."
Hmm.
She ended up working on that as she got older and she became a more loving, peaceful individual and much more patient. She is an Aries or was an Aries, so she was just fire,
Hmm.
little feisty firecracker. But as I got older, I was able to realize and go back and see the trauma that she had endured and how that was affecting her and her life, the relationships around her and me as a child. And then I saw her evolve and change and do the work. But yes, it takes a lot of courage, a lot of strength to continue operating from the heart space, especially after, and that's just one instance, you know, because you want to be free to do that. But it
Hmm.
can be very triggering. Now,
Hmm.
exactly what we said. She had been heartbroken over and over
Hmm.
and over again by someone that she trusted, that she loved
Hmm.
her. And then that carried over. So whether it's society, it is this matrix or it's the people around us, it takes a lot of courage to continue to give that love, that unconditional love to shine bright. And we will be wounded in the process. It is a battleground. We are warriors, but it is to strengthen that muscle to teach us because even if people want to throw dirt on that light, dim it, it's
Hmm.
okay. Dust yourself off, purge it, feel it. It's okay. It's gonna hurt because other people are hurt. You said misery loves company. It's true.
Hmm.
But it doesn't, but we have to keep going because you're right. It's not for the faint of the heart. It's of, yeah. So,
Totally.
yeah. So it just reminded me of that. It takes a lot of courage and strength. So,
Yeah. It's interesting that you said that because there's similar wounding in my family. Both of my grandmothers, and this goes back to repeating the trauma patterns, but both of my grandmothers had mothers who were highly sadistic, cruel, cruel women. And both of them also happened to be Swedish, which is not to say, an indictment against Swedish women in general, but it shows that both of my grandmothers were impressed upon in that specific culturally cruel way. Like the culture was used in ways that were, imprinted upon the kids, but then also they had a sadistic twist to it. I know that there are a lot of wonderful Swedish people too, but
Yeah,
it just shows that in repeating those patterns, they found each other because they had the same maternal imprint of, both of my parents had mothers who were highly wounded by their grandmothers, their mother's mothers. So it just shows you that we create and perpetuate the same trauma and not even in subtle, there are very specific patterns. When you start playing this out, you can see how we gravitate towards what feels like home. It's the same kind of culture. It's the same kind of way that we don't even necessarily realize there's a pattern there until we stop to really break it down, that we keep perpetuating these traumas when we let our woundedness lead us. And so that's why
absolutely.
it's also important to open your heart, because when you open it up, then you're willing to face what's there and you can recognize those patterns, which that data is such powerful knowledge in moving forward with decisions. You can say, oh, here's a pattern at play. I should pay attention to this.
Exactly.
Am I going to get myself back into another karmic loop where I'm repeating this? Or is this a coincidence? Or I don't know, but I can tread more slowly here now that I recognize that. And also then we
Exactly.
purge that wounding so that it doesn't define us. And we're not going to, instead of being gravitated towards people who would hurt us in the same ways over and over again, we start to get the ick factor. When you heal those traumas,
That's
the,
right.
you use
Oh
the
my
things you used to be
gosh.
magnetized towards suddenly turn to ick and disgust because you get an aversion therapy. Like that is straight up
That's
aversion therapy.
true.
Yeah, and it makes you sick to your stomach after like the things that you
That's
used to choose over and over
true.
again.
That's so true. I've
Yeah.
experienced that.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, it
Yeah.
does make you sick to your stomach. Oof.
I could
Yeah.
never make that choice again because I
No.
recognize the disgust and the nausea for what it is, and that it is a spiritual defense mechanism that I was taught to repress in order to make myself accessible to exploitative predatory people who benefited
Right.
from me being in that open place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's why it's so much better when you're standing in your truth or your sovereignty, your authentic self, and you're shining brightly. It's either going to call in the people who are going to align with you. I mean, it's going to magnetize all different types of people, of course, you know.
Hmm. Yeah.
But what's going to end up happening is it will repel
Hmm.
the ones that are not operating at that frequency. It will end up, or you'll be ick factor, right?
Hmm.
Or they will be removed and repelled because
Yeah.
they just can't handle it.
Hmm.
Um,
And
anyways,
that's how we start to
yeah,
gravitate what's good for us and
uh-huh.
repel what isn't good for us. And you got to
That's
feel it to
right.
heal it.
You
There's no going
do.
around it. The obstacle is the way. That is how you get through it. And then it repairs because, if you think about how brilliant our immune system is from a biological standpoint, our spiritual immune system is just as brilliant. And when we let it do its job without impeding it without getting in the way, when doctors don't fix broken bones, they set broken bones so they can fix themselves. It's the body
Right.
that is the miracle. It is the body that is genius. And our spiritual technology is just as brilliant. And when we get out, and that's connected to our psychology because thought,
That's
feeling
right.
matter. And so when we and that's why there's so much overlap between psychology and spirituality and the tech, how it overlaps. There's so much
Huge.
interplay there. Hmm.
Huge.
Yeah, and there are problematic things on both sides of that. There are serious issues with the psychology industry, and there are serious issues with misinformation and people, becoming experts without having done study, without actually consulting experts and things too. And also, there are a lot of predators who are experts. Like all of these are problems, and that doesn't mean we can't find people who are functioning from an ethical, pure place, but we have to weed them out. And especially, I recently met a woman who is a psychologist and a spiritualist. And I said to her, I was like, you need to start a YouTube channel and you need to
Yeah,
create a course. Your work is so needed, that you have this understanding of both worlds,
that's
that you have the
wonderful.
credentials, that you are such a good person, that you really want to help people, and that you also have the spiritual knowledge and this insight. Like, your work is so needed. I was like, the world needs you. The world needs you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can
Absolutely.
find balance and nuance in there, but we have to be willing to sift through uncomfortable information, and we need to be able to face what is real, what isn't true. We need to look at a lot of data in both of those. And the matrix system alone doesn't have all the answers, but it does have some important standards. And, the spiritual world, it can be highly prone to narcissism and abuse too. All of that is true. You find the polarity in all of it. So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times that's where the fear-based system comes in. People who are operating in fear, and then what they'll do is if you're still not awake or you're not in your power and you're operating in fear-based beliefs, and they will use that
Hmm.
against you in order to control you.
Hmm.
Because you feel like that's the only way. But that's something to learn from in this life when you come here, that actually it's not about fear, it's about love, and you do have the power.
Hmm.
You don't have to be afraid. Yes, our
Hmm.
shadow is very important. Of course, it is a protector. We have to be aware, we have to be strategic. But
Hmm.
there can be a lot of narcissistic abuse.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of control tactics. Oh, that's for another day, I feel like. With regards to spiritual or religious,
Yeah.
yeah,
Part of it too is because it's necessarily open to all people. And
yeah.
also, that makes it ripe for bypassing and people who don't want to do the work. And when I say do the work, there are different kinds of work. There's the work of actually creating the website and actually putting yourself out there and actually doing that. And that is hard. But there's also doing the quiet work, like opening your heart chakra and
Thank
actually feeling
you.
the pain,
That is
actually
so
going into it.
huge,
And so many
Angela.
people, want to do their plant medicine, and there's nothing wrong with that as a tool. But when you make those things a crutch and you don't integrate yourself and you're not actually taking the journey, which will also need to include a lot of sobriety, whether you're using plant medicine in
Thank
moderation or not,
you.
you need to be more sober than not most of the time.
That's a
Because if you,
spirit. That's a
yeah,
spirit you're putting in your body.
yeah,
You,
and
it's a spirit. Same with alcohol. That's a
mhm,
spirit. And I'm not very familiar with plant medicine. I've never done it, but I
mhm,
do know with alcohol, it's fermented. What does fermented mean? Sour, dead, dark. It's a dark spirit that you are putting into your body. All of it has to be respected. I've never done plant medicine and I don't
mhm,
drink, but it's very rare. I can't say I don't ever drink. I'll have
mhm,
a glass of wine or, on a special occasion, but I don't drink. We don't have
mhm,
anything in the house, unless it's for my spirits, my
mhm,
ancestors. Like I will lay out food
mhm,
and alcohol for them. My gypsy loves red wine, so I'll lay out a glass for her. That's something
mhm,
I do in particular because I want to,
mhm.
I don't
Yeah,
care. And
yeah.
yeah, she likes it. But so, but a lot of times people do use that as a crutch and they will get addicted to
Mhm,
number one, I feel like it's an escape, it's a crutch.
mhm,
Rather than sitting through, I know there's a process where you purge and all of that, and you feel, feelings, but when you do it and you're just being and you're just sitting with yourself and you're taking that time to really feel it,
mhm, mhm,
present, sitting here like, okay, I'm here, and
mhm,
it's time for me to actually process it
mhm.
in this realm without escaping anywhere.
Yeah, you
That's
need
a
to be in
different
your body.
in
So much of it,
your body.
so
Yeah,
much
just
of it
like
is
here.
disembodying us. It keeps us dissociated, which is just repeating the trauma. The trauma is divorcing us from our body, which is has its place, right? Because
We need to come back to
dissociation,
our body.
yeah, we have to come back when we're in the thick of trauma. Dissociation saves us. Its divine purpose is to save us. But when we stay out of our body, then we are living a disembodied life, and we are not living our life. And when we keep using substances to do that, and again, I think I'm a big believer of the middle way, and I think sometimes to find the middle way, you have to go to extremes before you recognize, okay, this is balance. And balance actually takes more discipline because it's easier to be all or nothing. It is
Absolutely.
easier to fall to one extreme. And so to stay in balance means you are engaged. It means you are present. It means you are here. And that takes more focus and it takes more muscle, not necessarily like hard muscle, but it takes engaged muscle. It means that you are fully in your body. Um, so I know, I mean, I know that there was a period of my time that I relied really heavily on cannabis after a really intense trauma that I almost lost my life several times. And I relied really heavily on it. And also, one thing is that it came into my path easily that way. And so it was really useful for me to get me into a state of finally resting and finally, but it was not a good place to stay. And then I, had to go, back to a complete sobriety before I can find, a very occasional use. And when you only use it occasionally, then you can use very small quantities. And I think another key litmus test is,
Absolutely.
am I abusing the plant? Because the plant is there to teach us. It is a beautiful, it can be a teacher, but if you are abusing the plant, you are also abusing yourself. If you're abusing yourself with it, you are also abusing the plant or whatever medicine it is. So
Absolutely.
am I using this respectfully to me and to it? And if you're not, if you can't say yes to both of them, then it's no to both of them. That's the yin yang of it. And so
Exactly.
you can use a very small quantity occasionally, and because your tolerance is so low, you have a really, wondrous healing experience. And then because you go back to sobriety, you have a lot of time to integrate all of those messages and lessons and openness. The first time I used cannabis in a very long time, I actually felt my Merkaba open. I felt the extent
Wow.
I was really compressed in my energy. This was several years ago, and I felt like the expansion of it, and I could even feel like the corners of the points, and I was like, and my first inclination was like, I am so powerful, and the second thought was like, I felt like an angel. I was like, I'm powerful, I'm
Wow.
an angel. Like it was like so eye-opening, but you also lose the magnitude and the gravity of those kinds of situations when you use it a lot because then it's just kind of numb. And
Exactly.
I almost died several times. It was a horrific experience, and I'm so grateful that it was there to give me a padded landing for several months, which I needed. But then I needed to go totally clean, to clean it out of my system, to actually feel the feelings. I had given myself time to, sort, and then I needed to feel the feelings that I had to put off long enough to just get myself down from rattling. So you still have to
Absolutely.
integrate that. You can't bypass it. You can't forever put it off. You have to then go clean the shelf that you put everything on. You got to take it down. You got
Yeah.
to unpack all of it. And you got to do that sober if you really want to have a clean experience. And then you get into a position of
Absolutely.
light moderation for some people. But, it takes more discipline to do that. It takes more exercise. And I also think there's more benefit to using very small quantities if that's what's guided for people when it is. And it's not always for everyone either. But
Absolutely.
yeah,
No, I can relate to that.
yeah.
I think for me, one of my escapes was when I was in my teen years. My teen years, I was so focused mostly on parties. So I lived out in Palm Springs at the time, and I love how you talked about the trickster spirits, whether it's in the light or the dark.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, and getting you out, or no, what was it before that you said? What better thing to do? Not the trickster spirit. That came through for a reason though, but we may have to come back to that. But how is this aligned to where like come to this earth and why pick something easy when you want to get yourself out of all the knots? Oh, the
Hmm.
Houdini. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Houdini.
Yeah.
Okay. So, living in Palm Springs, I mean, what do you have to do out there? I mean, play golf,
Dessert. Yeah.
play golf, swim, or get in trouble,
Hmm.
right? There's nothing. And everyone is retired, or it was at the time when I was growing up there.
Hmm.
Um, and so, yeah, I mean, I was the most wild, rebellious child. I went from being very, very quiet to, of course, this is a trauma response. Why not rebel against everyone and everything? So, I think I entertained way too much of
Hmm.
of that during that period of time. Um, And I quit doing that. But then what transitioned in my life was somebody who to where we went to Las Vegas and we drank all the time and it was that unhealthy lifestyle and
Yeah.
all of that. But it was more on you're right, an abusive level.
Hmm.
Um and then I got injured too. I got in that horrific car accident. So it was like this transition of cannabis to drinking to pain medication because the damage of my entire spine to where I
Yeah.
couldn't walk
That's so hard. Yeah.
and getting it fused. But it's really amazing what you have to do in order to, you're right, you have to cleanse it, you have to purge it, remove it from your life because it was an overindulgence. Once again, that goes back to the codependency, the
Hmm.
trauma,
It's
you
all
know.
connected. Yeah.
It's everything is connected. And if your parents had codependencies or anything like that, then that gets passed down into you as a
Hmm.
little baby. But yeah, I mean, really having to cleanse, purge, be present, come back to self, um, after many, many years. That was so long ago too. I think 2014, 2013, where I had to make a decision to really take control of my life. And I kept having tower moments. It was like, it's not going to matter. You can't numb this anymore. You
Hmm.
can't escape none of it. You've got
Yeah.
to come be within the self, in the body. You have to feel everything,
Hmm.
every pain, every
Yeah.
emotion. You have to work through it. It is so worth it, but it is painful. That's why it's really important not to escape, you know, our wounds. We have to come back and we have to work through them.
Yeah, and we're talking about cannabis and opioids and alcohol as a form of escapism. And in my definition of sobriety, it is really being embodied, living in your body and feeling all your feelings and not bypassing them. But there are other ways to do that too. You can use video games, you can use shopping, you can use gambling. Absolutely, codependency. Codependency is a
Sex,
drug.
you can,
Sex. Anytime of
porn,
anytime you're using, yeah, those anytime you're
anything.
using, if you're manipulating your own brain hormones, whether they're sex hormones, whether it's dopamine through, gambling kinds of things, whether it's abuse of power is a form of dopamine addiction. You're trying to submit other people and you get that rush, but it flitters away in an instant, and then you need to go up the ante and do twice as much damage for half as much return. It is always diminishing returns.
Exactly.
Addictive behavior is always diminishing returns. And so food is another one, chocolate, sugar. I think sugar is a little bit over demonized, and also we need to stay in balance because it can absolutely, anything we're using to get ourselves away from feeling all of our feelings. Uh,
Absolutely. Yeah. Any
exercise,
distraction,
exercise is great for us. Exercise can absolutely be addiction to get us.
overworking.
Mhm. So it's anything that's trying to get us out of, if we're out of our sobriety, it's because, and I think Brene Brown was the one who really clued me in on this for the first time. She said something, and I'm totally, paraphrasing because it's been several years since I heard her say it, but she's basically saying like being in your sobriety is about being in your integrity. It is about telling the truth. It is about feeling your feelings. It is about being in the present moment. So if you're telling lies, but you're not drinking anymore, you're not in your sobriety. If you are,
Exactly.
manipulating power structures, but you haven't put any chemicals in your body, you are still not in your sobriety. Being in your sobriety is about being very present and very much in your integrity and functioning from that inner heart-centered place, heart-led
Right.
place.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I love what my son said, and he got it from anime. He's like, Mom, I think he got it from anime. I could be wrong. I could be wrong. But he's like, Mom, integrity is more important or more valuable than loyalty because loyalty can be bought. But when
Mm-hmm.
you're in your integrity, you're in that heart space.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was really beautiful. I'm like, you're such a wise young man.
Yeah, that's good. It's
Yeah,
it's loyalty to yourself and your path and your connection to the Most High.
Absolutely. Because there are recording angels. I'm just going to say that. And even
Yep.
if you think you're not being watched, you are. But it's also about us
Mm-hmm.
knowing what feels good and what doesn't, what is
Mm-hmm.
right and wrong, having a conscience,
Mm-hmm.
having that integrity, not
Yeah.
wanting to hurt other people. And when we are not living in that heart-centered space, Angela, we can hurt other people.
Yep.
And we really need to take accountability for that and just who
Mm-hmm.
we are. Um, so yeah. Thank you everyone for joining me and Angela. We're sending you so much love and we pray that you're always surrounded by the Most High God's love, protection, and blessings. Bye, guys.
Bye.
I walk with faith. You've never failed, not once before. Why would you now, my Lord? So I lay it all in open hands and follow where you stand. You're the breath inside my chest. I'll trust you with the rest. I walk with faith, not with fear. Every step I know you're near. I walk with faith, not with fear. Every step